designed our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Mom with the new flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
And I'm a bloody hole in the wall, Mike.
And I'm Colton.
It's your heavenly meat, Jill.
And we are for...
You would.
That one lost us. That one...
Oh, no.
I thought Mike was gonna take that one, honestly.
I struggled a bit, sorry.
Heavenly meat is the one.
I actually think I might have missed that when I was playing Elden Rings.
Yeah, it's on the
subtitle. We'll explain it a bit later.
I heard words, but not
not heavenly meat.
I don't know what they meant.
But we are back for another special episode, a Patreon pick, and we love doing these. Not just because you're paying us to do them, which you don't really like. None of us are like fat cats. We're not just walking around buying, cigars. I don't know, what do rich people buy? Cars and cigars. We put a good use. We bought Mike a microphone. That's exciting. A new one. You should sound
and this
all
is my
spiffy.
first time using it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, second time, technically, when you're listening to this. It'll be your second time. Yeah.
Double recording session, you know?
Yeah. I've been sat down here at this desk all night, like chained to it.
We're showing you how the sausage is made. Actually, we're recording every episode this year tonight. So, just sprinting it on these guys.
When we sound really tired later on in the year, you'll know why.
When these guys find out that every month is James Wan month, we'll see how they feel.
I think you would be the one that would be the most upset by that.
Yeah, I do. I feel that would be the case. But yeah, Colton, why don't you, let people know about the Patreon?
God, I always forget what I'm supposed to do here because we do the Patreon pick so infrequently. But yes, if you're pledging to us at the Horror Hound level on Patreon, which I believe is $5 a month.
Yes.
Once you've pledged for 6 months, we'll give you the option to choose something for us to review. You know, we don't always get around to it right when someone's been pledged for 6 months, but we'll keep track of it and reach out and make sure that we cover whatever your pick is, just because we had an influx of people joining at the same time, and we don't want every single episode to be a Patreon pick. So yeah, if you'd like to support the show, you can do so, like Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Steven, Joy, Carvey, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and maybe some other people. We'll wait. Get access to the Patreon exclusive show, Stream Screams, and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early. You can do so by heading on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. And this Patreon pick is brought to you guys by Steven. He said that he picked the medium mainly because it felt like a breath of fresh air in the world of found footage horror. Although criticized for its slowness by some people, he found that it built up beautifully to a gruesome final act and instilled in him a genuine curiosity about Thai culture and Buddhism, and to what degree of accuracy the film used these aspects in its storytelling. He also chose this because he hardly watches any movies anymore, let alone international ones, so this was a real surprise treat for him when he tossed it on one evening while browsing Shudder. And with that, he has one last note: Fido soup, anyone? Arf, arf. Which I bet was a scene that Rowan absolutely loved. I guess we'll see in a few minutes. And, the heavenly meat that Jill referenced. Fido.
Oh, yes. Arf, arf.
So, let's get into the trailer and we'll be back with the synopsis and first experiences.
ย่าบายันจะเลือกเฉพาะผู้หญิงเท่านั้นที่มาเป็นร่างของท่านหญิงช่วงนี้มีได้ยินเสียงใครมาเรียกมั่งหรือเปล่าฮะแต่ถ้าหากว่าย่าอยากมาเข้ามาเที่ยมมันอีหลีมึงเสียจังไดเอาทุกอย่างมันถูกกำหนดไปแล้วมึงเป็นไผมึงก็ลองถ่ายดูสิว่ากูคือใคร
The The Medium was directed by Banyang Pisanthanakun and written by Banyang Pisanthanakun, Chuan Chua, Chantawit Danasevi, Nahang Jin, and Siwawat Suwatanan, and the story is as follows. In the Isin region of Thailand, a documentary film follows Nim, a shaman for the goddess Bayan, hoping to document her everyday life and the people who come to her for guidance. But following the sudden death of her brother-in-law, her niece Mink starts exhibiting signs thought to be indicative of Bayan's will to choose her as her next host. Presented with a far more interesting angle for their documentary, the filmmakers capture Mink's increasingly strange behavior, the desecration of sacred shrines, failed occult rituals, and numerous deaths in horrifying detail. But none the more horrifying than Nim's revelation that she may have never been a conduit for Bayan at all, and instead was just a medium for her family's suffering.
So we know where we're starting. Our first experiences. Is this our first time seeing it, or are we just experts in Thai horror? I got a feeling probably no on all those fronts. We will start with you, Mike. Is this your first time seeing The Medium?
It is. I actually hadn't heard tell of it before, and had to go look it up when we got the pick. And I'm really glad, because I don't think, unless I was doing like one of those deep dive, like scrolling through Shudder, like just trying to see everything, that it would have sort of come on my radar anytime soon. So yeah, this is my first time, and I'm glad it was suggested. Jill?
Is that one of those deep dives that you scroll over and then you click on quicksand and quickly regret your life like I do often?
It happens more often than not.
I interrupted. Sorry, Jill.
You're fine. Yeah, same here. Same as Mike. Never heard tell of it. Never watched it before. So yeah, and I actually watched this in 2 sittings, which Colton was not happy about. But
Nope.
I started watching this the other morning when I woke up, and then my husband like went to a doctor's appointment, and it was like halfway through, it was like getting scary. So I was like, I can't watch this when I'm home alone, or I'm never gonna sleep again. And upon watching the second part of it today, I am glad I did that, because I'm never gonna sleep again. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, so this one actually was on my radar. I believe this kind of got a trailer out around the same time as when The Wailing came out a couple of years ago, which I don't believe that's a Thai horror film, but kind of dealing with the same aspects like the occult and shamanism, that sort of thing. So it was on my radar, and it was on my watch list back in the day when I had hundreds of movies on my watch list. But I just had a couple of friends making fun of me for my watch list and how long it was and how I never watch anything on the watch list. So I deleted it at some point. And this one kind of just, I just forgot about it. The only thing I've seen by this director is one of his entries on the ABCs of Death, which I don't know which one he did, but that's not a particularly great movie. And I know a lot of people have seen Shudder by him. That's kind of like a more classic Thai horror film, but I actually haven't seen that one either. So yeah, this was kind of like my real, introduction to this director. And yeah, we'll talk about it here in a minute. Rowan, was this your first time seeing this?
Yeah, I had never heard of this before. I'm a guy that has, deep scrolled Shudder. I felt all the way to the end of Shudder, and I don't remember this kind of popping out at me. Now, rightfully so, I'm kind of ignorant when it comes to foreign language horror. Usually I lean towards like French and Spanish, and that's about it. Yeah, so this was something I would have never picked in 8 million years, and then I'll talk about whether or not I'm happy it's on my radar or not. So, yeah, let's get into the, I feel like there's no more, dog meat jokes I can make. So,
Eggs.
Let's get,
Thank God.
Let's get into the peeing on the...
Eggs and turmeric.
Eggs and turmeric. I was gonna say, let's get into the peeing on the kitchen table of it all.
There you go. Can I kick things off? Because
yes.
When I joined the show, there was like a couple of different segments you guys used to do that I was like, I don't know if we should really bother doing these anymore. I think like one was like the budget game or something. And then eventually we kind of phased out. Is it scary? Is it unsettling? Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like most of the time, like 99% of the time, the conversation would go like this. Did we find it scary or unsettling? No, but... and we just explain something about the movie that we could just get to without having that question. Or it would be thematically it's unsettling, which is like, once again, that's completely different. Yeah. So today I want to ask, did you guys find this movie scary or unsettling?
Both.
Jill says she's not sleeping again. So.
Yeah. I felt the same way. That's why I wanted to ask the question. I found this movie in the latter half pretty unsettling at times. There was some good scenes that I'm sure we'll talk about, but this was one of the ones when I was here like writing up some notes, discussion points, I was like, I have to bring back this segment because it was one of the few movies in a while I felt like a little bit unsettled by.
Same though. Same.
Yeah. Yeah,
okay. I will fully admit that I didn't expect it to become as like unhinged as it did.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like, I didn't know anything about it, so, you know, I had no reason to think that it wouldn't. I just was like, okay, this is going to be your sort of like run-of-the-mill possession exorcism flick, except...
Definitely in there, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But like, it just, the execution of it was not what I was expecting. So yeah, there was a couple of times I was like just gagged. I'm like, oh, like what the fuck? Did that just happen? Also, what is currently happening?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, you guys know me. I'm just cold heart waiting to be warmed. And yeah, I can actually say, like, I don't even know the last time we watched a movie that I actually thought was like scary. And this was definitely it. You know, I'm not as egregious as Jill, but it's kind of funny because I watched this last night. We started in the living room and, you know, on the big TV and everything, which was actually really great for the first part of the movie because all the beautiful scenery and all that stuff. And then Tilly was getting tired and she's like, hey, do you want to come in the bedroom? And like, I'm going to go to sleep. But like, we have a littler TV in the bedroom. So, you know, I begrudgingly, I'm like, yeah, like, but if it's pissing me off that it's too small, because I also got to read subtitles.
The subtitles, yeah.
I was like, I'm going back out. So, like, I'm laying in bed watching this. All of the lights are off in the house. And yeah, I was like scared to death. I was just like, I was like looking at my closet. I'm like, am I going to get like a demon mink head coming out of my closet? Like, what the fuck?
It's terrifying.
Yeah, I felt that when I was going to bed last night as well, because I watched this, I don't know, probably started around 11:45, you know, almost midnight. And I live alone, so I was just watching this movie. And in the latter half, there was multiple scenes that it was either like the sound design or just like the physical performance that I was just like, this is unsettling in the way that like it reminded me back in the day when I was a kid. When I saw like that one scene from the Poughkeepsie tapes of the guy crawling across the floor or whatever, that it just unsettled me, that I was like, this is kind of in the same vein. I know for sure I'm going to have thoughts like later tonight when I got to run upstairs, go take a piss, that I'm going to be like, everything's dark up there. And I'm like, oh no, which is like, it's so great to see a movie like that because it's been so long since I've felt that. I'll get like little pieces of that from movies that'll be a quick scene that'll be like, oh God, that was kind of freaky or that was crazy what just happened, but not really like this feeling like throughout like such a long portion of the movie. Like when this gets into like the third act and everything's like going off the rails and it's like this prolonged like scenes of like dread or like basically the paranormal activity portion of this movie. I thought like I was like very much unsettled. So I'm glad I'm not the only one. I'm glad I'm not just a huge pussy on the show. Like we all, you know, found it scary. That's good.
Yeah, and I really didn't think this was necessarily going to work because I feel like I've had the conversation before. Like, found footage is probably like my least favorite genre of horror. I never connect to it. I can never immerse myself in it. Like, you know, I like the Blair Witch kind of on a nostalgia feel. And then other than that, I feel like it's very much like, you know, a Deadstream or like something that's more comedy and it doesn't really matter that it's a found footage. You know, when I was watching this, I was thinking, because like, you know, I mean, Thailand's just like gorgeous. Like everything's gorgeous about the forests and everything. But I kept thinking to myself, like, I'm like, I just know I'm not going to be able to get into this. I know it's going to be like this possession movie, but like found footage is just not going to work for me. And I think that was just like almost the brilliance that it caught me like so off guard with that. Because this also, I thought, looked really good, especially in our age of, like, Netflix crime documentaries, where I was like, this looks like a Netflix documentary. Like, I've seen stuff shot exactly like this. And, yeah, I think it was almost scary just how well the found footage worked for me in this.
Yeah, for me, I find I actually love found footage in horror movies. And, like, lots of times they'll be framed either in like an anthology or it'll just be like a stylistic choice that's not really addressed. But I do find when they use the mockumentary format, it could either really work like something like a Noroi or a Lake Mungo or something like, you know, just kind of, or Blair Witch, obviously, like they use like that form of kind of like literally like they're documenting something that's real and they kind of lull you into like believing like the narrative that you're watching. Or sometimes it's just really cheesy and you're constantly wondering like why they're still recording this, which I will say is a criticism of this movie. There's shit in this movie that it's like, bro, whatever cameraman, cinematographer you are gone, long gone. You're not recording this. So there were scenes in the movie where I was like, I kind of would have liked if they just like dropped the camera or left the tripod and ran away or something and just still recorded. But I will say like that mockumentary style of like, once again, presenting it as fact, like the truth, and like we all know it's not true, but the fact that they can kind of like lull you in and make you believe it is like one of the most effective versions of like found footage styles to me. Like I love mockumentary filmmaking when it's done well. And, you know, there's a lot of bad examples of it, but, you know, this was definitely
more bad than good for sure. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, it's just you have to have like the performances in particular have to be so naturalistic to make you believe that it's actually like real life. And maybe it's just because this is a foreign language, because I find it's hard sometimes to judge a performance in a foreign language film, just because once again you can't really get like the intonation, like the delivery of the lines. It's, you know, it's a foreign language, you're reading subtitles, so you're distracted a little bit. But in this I felt like everyone felt like real people, so that really helped. I liked when they were interviewing Nim and they were talking about like, oh well, can your god like heal cancer, can it do this? And she's just like laughing, she's like, no. Like, you know, like most of these movies would be like, oh yeah, you know, my god can heal anything, but Nim's very much like, no, like, you know, Bayan can only heal like, you know, dark sicknesses or something different like that. Basically they're not in our realm of purview. That just like, once again, there was all these little details throughout that have made it feel more authentic to me.
Yeah, it's a big risk doing a mockumentary type film and being effective with it. I love watching documentaries, and also I love watching 90 Day Fiancé, which is trash, but it's still a trash docuseries. And it does have, you know, some of the cast are from Thailand. And I don't know if Rowan has seen the seasons with David and Annie from 90 Day Fiancé, but Annie's from Thailand, and there's like spin-off series they have with her where they go to Thailand, and you know, they're speaking Thai and you see her family structure, and I think it really reminded me of that. Like, so you asking yourself, is this authentic? Like the way they were talking and everything, it really reminded me of that, and it felt authentic. And I don't know, it really captured me, like the whole documentary bit. Like you said, it was so natural and well done that it kind of sucks you in. You forget what you're watching.
I thought it was kind of funny just when you were reading the blurb from Steven, that like one of my first notes, literally almost word for word, is what he said, which is just like, I had a note that said, like, what I love about movies like this is, like, it makes me want to deep dive into the culture. And, I was like, I don't know anything about Thailand. Like, I was literally YouTubing after this. Like, I'm like, can I find any documentaries about, like, you know, like, Thailand and the religions and like, is the shaman stuff like
the occult
stuff like that. Now I didn't come to any fruition of it
normally, but some are Christian.
If anyone listening like knows, please send this way like names of documentaries, because I'm very interested. And like I said, like that's something like before I watched this, I was, you know, Thailand is beautiful, but I didn't really have any interest to like deep dive into any of this stuff. And now I'm like, man, I just really want to like help elevate this movie for the next time I see it, to be able to like maybe understand the culture more and maybe see like things that, even though I'm saying, oh, this is scary as shit, like I'm sure there's stuff that culturally for them is like super, super scary. That like I'm not getting, because I'm just a piece of westernized white trash over here. So
that's what I really liked about it as well. Just being completely like enveloped in like a completely foreign culture, you know, that's like back in the day when I discovered like J-horror, for example, like, you know, like The Ring or The Grudge or whatever. I remember back then saying like how the beats of a horror scene are completely different than like westernized society, and that's the same with this movie too. They don't adhere to the normal, you know, beats, the silences, the 3 beats that like of every scene. Like you just discussed it on our Dead Silence episode, Rowan, of like you can kind of track out the beats of a horror scene, and when you see like a foreign movie like this, they don't adhere to that, but also there's just so many little aspects that like you don't really fully understand. Like just basically how like spiritualism over there, how everyone believes in like spirits, like shamans, all that. It's like completely foreign to me. And it just makes it that much scarier that everyone believes that this is, you know, the explanation and a probability, like what is happening to Mink in the movie. For me, even in this like foreign language movie, what was an interesting detail for me is like obviously being raised in a Christian household. When Mink makes fun of speaking in tongues, I wrote, uh-oh. And the reason why is because when I was growing up, I used to hear people speaking in tongues all the time. And I remember at a very early age, my mom was told, like, never make fun of that. Like, apparently, like, making fun of that is the one, like, irredeemable sin. You cannot be forgiven for that if you're, like, intentionally making fun of it. So when she's making fun of it in this movie, I was very much like, things are not going to go well for this character. And, like, sure enough, 10 minutes later, she's, like, completely possessed and all messed up. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that like that little detail was in there, because obviously like her family converted to Christianity to try and get away from becoming a shaman. God, I was forgetting my words. But yeah, it was just like, oh, that was an interesting detail. One small thing in this movie of like mostly foreign concepts that I was like, oh, I know that. That's interesting.
So we all know how much I didn't like The Exorcist. And when it comes to like, you know, Christian religious possession movies, I tend not to connect so well with it. And I think it's because I have like a major beef with Christianity or something, because I did not mind any of the religious like mystique or like spiritual mystique of what was happening here. I was all for it. So I was wondering what you guys thought maybe about that compared to like The Exorcist, or, you know.
I think the most one-to-one to me, other than like, of course, the ending where, or not the ending, but like when we're getting close to the third act, it's like, we gotta bring in the specialist, the demonologist, you know, this guy has to come in to like help out. We do a super exorcism where we're both going to do it at the same time, or that was the plan, which obviously didn't work. The one that was like most blatant to me that it felt like The Exorcist was when they go into her bedroom, I think. And it's like they wrap like the bit of like yarn or rope around her head and stick her finger in a glass, and like it's kind of like seeping out of her. Then she's like vomiting and stuff. I was like, this feels very much The Exorcist, but like in a good way. They're kind of like paying homage to it, not like The Exorcist Believer, where it's like you got this weird root magic and like all these things burning and flying across the room. This felt like, oh, I can kind of understand like conceptually like why you would need like a glass of water to like hold the poison coming out of her, or like why you might have to restrain her head with some sort of like rope or something like that. Like there were aspects to it that it still felt like I can understand how like an ancient ritual would kind of get to this. Like, obviously, it's not the Christian way that they did it, but I can understand, like, logically how they got to this point. So it felt very authentic. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is like a Thai riff on The Exorcist.
I agree with that. And my thought on it was that, like, I think that a lot of times using, like, religion as a basis for horror in movies is effective, but sometimes it's extremely annoying. But also, I find that, like, kind of the Christianity-based horror ones, it's just, they're always so, like melodramatic and, like, tortured, I guess. But I really enjoyed that this shared the similarities, because it kind of shows that it's a concept that, like, stretches across, it's like almost like a universal across like all sorts of different kind of faith, like all over the world. But, you know, they tackle it in like completely different ways. I like that. I kind of like that, like, oh, look, there's like commonalities amongst, you know, everything that we don't have in common. We also have demons possessing us.
I had like, it's almost comforting as an outsider that it's like, even though, like you said, Colton's those familiar kind of story beats of like, instead of a priest, a shaman, like instead of holy water, it's just like this cup of water in the strain. And like, so it's like, oh, we still have to do stuff to kind of tease the demon out. But it's also different enough that like it's interesting that I haven't seen it before. So
it didn't feel tired, which was interesting. Like, once again, I recognize the beats, especially like if this movie adhered to just like a Thai version of The Exorcist, it still could be really good. But it was just like there were certain beats where I was like, oh yeah, this is like what you would do in even the Insidious movie in the third act. You got to bring in the demonologist or something like that, right? Where it felt familiar, but there were so many other like intersections and references and like kind of like changing things up that it didn't feel just like completely trite. That I was just like, oh, this is the Thai version of The Exorcist. It was like changing things up, but also still familiar that like I was enjoying it, and I could kind of see where things were going sometimes.
Right. The main difference for me, I think, for this one is like how it ends. So like with, you know, typical like exorcist movies, you know, they prevail and like the priest usually, you know, completes the ritual and saves everybody in some way, even if they die. But what I thought was refreshing about this movie, and this probably makes me really fucked up, is the fact that you know, the demon kind of won. And
I agree.
They weren't able to finish the ritual, and then you intersect that with Nim's lack of faith at the very end, where she's like, maybe I wasn't this conduit all along, and maybe some of this is hopeless. And like when she's doing that ritual in the forest with the egg and it's not working, and then she's like, oh, the demon's taunting with me. You see her losing this faith. And at the end, it's all futile. And I don't know. I just really like that.
Yeah. Oh, I love a dour ending like that. Yeah.
I do think it's more on trend for like modern movies. Like, I don't know, Possession, and it wins at the end. Hereditary. Obviously, I'm the A24 fanboy, but there are examples.
Like
The Mist. You know? The Mist.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples like that it happens with dour endings, and I do think like the downer endings, especially in horror, are more popular nowadays. But still, with like once again, this just being like the basis of like aspects of this, like feeling like The Exorcist, I didn't necessarily expect them to fail in the end. And even more shockingly to me, I didn't expect Nim to die like halfway through this movie.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest surprises.
It was very Drew Barrymore getting murdered at the beginning of Scream, or like Janet Leigh dying.
If Drew Barrymore was around for an hour of Scream, they just randomly died. For me, it was like, imagine if Ed and Lorraine Warren just died right before the third act, before like the demonologist came in like, we'll meet tomorrow and we're going to do this crazy, you know, ritual. And then they just both die. Be like, what? What is this? It was crazy. I was just like, I did not see that coming at all. And once again, it was something that made it feel a little bit more real, that not everything was going perfectly to plan. Right?
Yeah, her character was like so maternal. I don't know. I just felt comforted by her being there. And like, you know, when she was around, I was like, okay, things are going to go well. And sometimes like I forgot it was a horror movie and I was just like sticking to this documentary. And I was like, oh, well, I hope things go well for her family, forgetting that, you know, this is what it is. And it's not going to end well. But I really liked her character. She was like really natural, organic character.
I'm also glad we got that final like little scene with her, even though it is a crisis of faith, and once again like blaming herself to a certain degree, and like, you know, just basically like, what was the purpose of my life? I like that just because she does get taken from us like so quickly, well, not quickly, but like so suddenly in the movie where you don't expect it at all. And it's like, oh, I'm glad that like she still had a voice right at the end of the movie, that she had like, the last say,
it brings it full circle because she opens the movie. And
that's also how, like, if it was a real documentary, that's how they would do it 100%. Could you imagine if your subject died halfway through the documentary? Like, you know, you would definitely bring up some footage recorded out of context and like make that more poignant for the end of your documentary. It just fit really well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it just like, especially when everything kind of goes nuts in that like third act, like, I just think it was so smart to kind of pull the rug under us. 'Cause like, yeah, she did have that like mothering or at least like comforting presence where everyone we're kind of left with in that third act. Like, I'm already dreading the fact that I'm like, none of these people seem competent. Like, none of these people really know what they're doing. Like, so I don't trust anything is good. Like, gonna go right, or it's gonna be a struggle for it to go right.
It's like Santi comes in and we just have to believe he knows what he's doing, right? He just feels like a televangelist or like a big time guy who comes in for me. He's like, I know what I'm doing. But it's like we don't know if he knows. Whereas like with Nim throughout the movie, we watch like multiple little things that at least we know she's spiritual and believes in herself to a certain degree, right? Whereas like this guy is just like, all right, let's see what this guy can do. I really did love all of the weird exorcism lore that gets dropped on us for like right before that sequence, though. I like made a note where it's like, you know, it has to happen on the 5th floor, and then we have to move the vessel from the 5th floor to the ground floor, or like bringing in the oxen for the beheading, or like all the ropes basically trying to tie all of the spirits together to then contain in a single vessel and all this stuff. It was just like, this is insane. Like, once again, it seemed very elaborate, but once again, not like so crazy, right? It wasn't like these concepts of like, I'm gonna go back to the Exorcist believer again, but it's just like, we're gonna expel, you know, this gas from these people and then we're gonna light it on fire and all this stuff, like shit that just doesn't make sense. Like tying strings anyone can do. Moving from the first floor to the fifth floor, anyone can do. And once again, I can kind of understand conceptually of basically like for imprisoning something, starting from a way higher place, like the fifth floor, and bringing it down to the first floor and below ground, like just like the moving it, right? It's like, it feels like it's being like deeper in prison. So there was like aspects of it I was just like, I'm not Thai, but I understand conceptually how like these concepts could be brought up. And I don't know if it's a legit exorcism thing that they would do in Thailand, but to me it felt very authentic once again.
From what I know from 90 Day Fiancé, like
I love that this is your touchstone. We just got to keep going back to 90 Day Fiancé.
Like, she's like, that's her rubric, is like breaking it down 90 Day Fiancé.
Steven's here like, yeah, I want to hear what these people have to say about the medium. Jill's like, you know what?
Sorry.
What about 90 Day Fiancé?
I'm anchoring, okay?
All right.
Yeah, they very much believe in spirits and like having a bad spirit on you. Like I've seen this on the show, and like having to go to, you know, some kind of spirit person like a shaman. Rowan's out. He's just fucking left. He doesn't even want to hear this. But yeah, they go to people to, you know, cast out spirits and people who are moody or whatever, you know, they have certain spirits in them. And also water buffalo are like really important to them. So
Okay.
yeah. But anyway, so
yeah,
I
there was
like
probably
everything
another
is,
reading for that. Yeah, that was even
it's
more
rooted
impactful
there.
then.
Yeah. But fuck, I don't know what we're talking about anymore.
Well, we were just talking about like the authenticity of like that ritual near the end. And also
Right.
like for whatever reason, I think I was expecting Mink herself to be there. So like
Yeah.
even though like obviously the you know, the size and the makeup of her mother and whatnot is different from Mink, especially at this point in the movie where she's like emaciated and like very tiny and whatnot, kind of like spindly, like in a weird way.
Yeah.
So when like it's revealed that it's actually Noi and not like Mink, I was like, oh, maybe I just missed a line somewhere, but it felt like a little bit of a revelation to me. I was like, oh, I kind of assumed that she was going to be the one there. They're bringing all the spirits together in her, but then dispelling it, right? But like this, it was actually like her mother, like being the vessel and like putting herself at risk to be like incredibly possessed by like hundreds of different spirits, that I was like, oh, this is actually, it feels weird to say a nice beat, but it was like a nice beat in the movie because it's like the mother for a lot of the movie blames herself and is also like one of those ones that it's just like essentially she seems to be making the wrong choices for her daughter at like, you know,
yeah,
every
I
point.
felt like for a lot of the movie she was also like in denial.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh no, this is not what's happening to her. Like, how dare you? You know what I mean? Like, I just got that kind of vibe from her. So you're right. And nice seems like such a weird way to put it, but like, you know, it's like almost heartwarming to see her like kind of step up and like potentially sacrifice herself or put herself at risk. But it also, I did also miss that if it was alluded to before that.
Or was she trying to just do her acceptance ceremony so that like the goddess could flow through her and then focus on ejecting the spirit out of Mink?
I feel like it was different than the acceptance ceremony because we got the acceptance ceremony earlier in the movie, then it gets disrupted, like interrupted halfway through, which you know, apparently that like allowed like the ceremony wasn't over, so now more spirits can get into her. It was only like halfway done. So I feel like it was a different sort of thing. But I you know, who knows?
I don't know. I just thought they were like somehow related.
Yeah, and maybe it was something that I missed, but it was just a little detail that I liked, that her mother was putting herself in the line of fire to essentially try and save her daughter. And it was like a little neat reveal for me, even that I was like, oh, Mink's actually in this room here with all the like little like paper tokens around it, you know, kind of sealing her inside.
Really cool, yeah.
Yeah, I like that as well. And like obviously we all know that like the baby's not in the room with her, and like obviously, you know, Mink is like wailing like a child, but
that
like
was so creative.
Yeah, that moment when she gets in there, I was just like, this is good shit, dude. I was just like, I was constantly impressed by a lot of the little beats in this movie.
The footage from the very first night scared the shit out of me.
Wait, what was the specifics of that footage, Rowan? Was that her crawling around, or
no? That was like it was kind of a shot. It's like centered at like the right in the bottom of the stairwell, and she's like,
I 100% agree.
She's in the dark on the left, and it's like kind of like your eyes just aren't focused on it, and and then like she just like kind of comes out of the shadow, but like
the way her body's contorted and the music and stuff.
But she was just like there for a bit till I realized she was there, and then I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
My favorite is when she's like at the fridge, like going through the food. It was cracking me up because I was like, that's me with, you know, the bag of shredded cheese.
With dogs. That's weird.
But
Oh my god, you do that too when I'm drunk at like
love
1:30
shredded
in the
cheese.
morning. And I
Yes.
have any pre-shredded cheese for like making pizzas or whatever. I'm like literally just taking it and dumping it in my mouth.
So good. It's like, I don't know, a little feral moment. But yeah, I love that. And also there's a jump scare that like made me almost scream.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, oh my god. My dog was
100%.
sitting next to me and she like fucked off somewhere. But yeah, when she's like, you know, she comes up to the camera and like throws it or whatever. So scary.
And it's so clever because once again, it's not the beats of a traditional like American film or something, right? Like we're watching essentially Paranormal Activity, and she crawls off like the left side, and she just like as soon as she exits the frame, all of a sudden like she's on the other side and grabbing the camera, right? Where in like a traditional, you know, Paranormal Activity, she'd exit the frame and then there'd be like 3 or 4 seconds where it's enough like, well, okay, well, why are we still watching this? Okay, she's obviously gonna pop up. This was like instant. It wasn't enough for me to even like think about like, oh, what if she appears on the other side, which obviously is such a natural scare, but it happened so quick that it caught me off guard as well. I got a note of like, holy shit, that jump scare when she takes down the camera. I got the same
She's
note
got that
there.
preternatural speed going on.
Yeah, there was one even earlier in the movie actually where, you know, he was doing all these you know, kind of grimy camera angles aiming in the women's bathroom where I was like, this isn't exactly, you know, the peak of documentary filmmaking. But there was one where essentially she like turns around, you can tell like she knows she's being recorded, and then it's like literally like half a second later she's right there at the door slamming it. And once again, it's kind of like him peeking with the camera, and then he kind of moves to the left a little bit and then kind of peeks over again. She's just there, and it's obviously it's unnatural speed to get over there. That was a small like little, I was like, oof, all right, that was quick. I didn't expect that. Like, so yeah, it was just keeping me on my toes. I was, you know, even in the slower parts of this movie for like the first hour or something, there was enough like little kernels throughout that I was like, I'm interested. I'm intrigued.
She was just fantastic overall. Like that actress, like with Naralia.
Do you want to try her?
Yeah,
names,
no,
Ron?
I'm good. I'm good. But like, yeah, I saw like not a very large filmography or anything, and like I thought she was fantastic. I saw in her bio she's currently in university. Way to go. Get that bachelor's.
Nice.
Yeah.
So she was
She
gonna.
did amazing.
But yeah, you know, I was thinking we're talking about, you know, obviously we're talking about a lot of scenes that we all loved, like towards the end and everything, and that third act. Like I was just thinking the overall, like do you guys like the overall tonal shift? Just that total like flip of the switch, where it's just like bat shit on like, you know, 0 to 100, just kind of bat shit.
So there were small beats in there that weren't my favorite. Like I have very small qualms with this movie, and like some of the stuff, like once again, just like intellectually basically being like, why would you continue recording? Or like there's some times where it's like, why do you have 4 or 5 camera angles here? Like once again, it's like stuff you're not always thinking about, but every now and then when the movie slows for a little bit, or you notice something that just kind of feels out of place, it impacted me a little bit more because just so much of it felt right. But in that third act in particular, I think the main one that kind of like bumped for me was like when the one guy was getting mauled by like the 4 or 5 different people, and then he's like, "Oh wait, I gotta show the camera. I gotta aim down at my intestines. You know, they're getting me here too. You know, like that was like one beat that I don't know if I needed like the 4 or 5 men crawling around.
Dude,
you
I
know,
loved
that...
it. They were
you
like
loved
dogs.
it? Okay.
Yeah, they were.
Oh yeah,
like
I found
dogs
it pretty
and they were
terrifying.
barking.
Oh yeah, okay.
They were like zombies. I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. They're like,
I get
screaming.
that, like you said, it's the way that it's shot sort of like can take you out of it, but like I still found it like just oof, like I shivers just thinking about it now.
See, that's interesting because I was kind of laughing throughout all of that, like, but it wasn't even like I don't feel negative that I was laughing about. Just that
no, you're just like, this is insane.
It goes so insane that I'm like, what am I watching? Like everything's happening. Like it's just like overwhelmed that all I can do is laugh, I guess.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes is like during that part where Mink shows up and you're looking at the camera through like the night vision and you see her and how like crazy she looks with like the contacts and her hair. She looks so good. And I know we just talked about her, but she just did such a great job, and the total like degradation of her character from the very beginning. She's like, you know, such a girly girl, you're just following her around. She's just happy to be like the center of attention for this documentary. And then you see how like subtly but like drastically she's changing and you think it's like not going to get any worse until like the very end. And It's just crazy. She's amazing.
You got to make sure to shut off those cameras at work, though, when you're staying in those shoots.
Those were, like, once again, we're talking about camera angles. They had a few different camera angles there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
They got all the CCTV feeds for that one.
All
Absolutely. Speaking of, like, once again, just to her performance, she does it really well in the earlier parts of the movie, too, just selling, once again, that, like, maybe this isn't actually possession. Of course, we're watching a horror movie.
Yeah.
We know this is going to wind up being possession to some degree, or, like, something, you know, that's not just mental illness. But, like, when they're kind of, like, seeding in this idea that she may have, like, had a relationship with her cousin, and, like, you know, there's the attempted suicide scene and stuff like that. Like, she has to deal and grapple with some, like, pretty dark material at times in the movie as well. That's not just purely possession, which obviously is dark material as well. That, like, she sold it really well as well. I was like, yeah, I mean, there's a chance that she could just kill herself here and, like, the entity gets passed to somebody else. Like, you know, there was points in the movie before it was, like, so explicit that it was going to be about her degradation that I was just like, yeah, she's selling all of this. Like, and once again, that's why the mockumentary style in this works so well, is because everyone is selling it. Like, there wasn't really a false note, even like some just small characters. I was like, okay, yeah, you're good for what you're doing, you know? So yeah, she was just great throughout, like, consistently excellent.
Incest was not on my bingo card when I started this movie.
There was a lot that wasn't on my bingo card when I started this movie.
I'm glad it was, though.
Yeah. Mike's here for incest. Yeah, Wincest.
Listen, no, I'm just like, oh my God. I'm here for the unexpected, okay?
I have a note, which I could have just been seeing things at this point. I don't know. But I have, WTF was that in the bushes? And I said, was that one of Jill's minotaurs that she's looking to milk? Did you guys notice that there's like this weird bestial thing for a quick second in the bushes? And then the camera kind of does this, and then it kind of goes down for a second, and it pops back up, and it's just Mink, and she like flies at the camera.
Yeah.
What was that?
See, I kind of assumed that was like the demon.
Yeah, the demon,
that's possessing her, like kind of its
but it's
like
so
natural
quick,
form. Yeah.
Like like if that's just the demon, that's insane to have, like, you know, one snippet of it in the whole movie.
Love it.
But also when she's like outside, in the very beginning, when she's being like followed by the crew and they're walking down the dirt road and there's that guy in the field.
Yeah.
And she's kind of looking at him. So maybe, you know, it's like, you know, interspersed.
The implications being that, like, she's seeing things that aren't there, but then like, obviously when we're seeing them on camera, they're actually there, right? Because the documentarian's like, oh yeah, I see that. And then it was the same with like the old blind lady, which I thought was a very good, like, early just unsettling beat that I was like, okay, is this like a spirit or a ghost? But then once again, if it is, why are we seeing it on camera and stuff? But it's like, oh no, like, everyone knew that there was like this old blind elderly woman there that she was just looking at strangely, that I was like, oh, okay, like, it's all addressed, like, it all seemed to make sense. But yeah, that one like quick beat of like the minotaur or whatever that guy standing there was, I was like,
a water buffalo demon.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was just shocked. So now I need to search up what water buffalo stuff is now. You know, like the cultural relevance of the water buffalo in Thailand, you know?
You get them for your dowry as well. Like,
is that what it is?
Your dowry could be like, you know, 3 water buffalo, because a family can make a fortune off of those.
Sick.
But anyway,
I was gonna say, I do want to shout out, they had a shot of like the church with like the neon cross going, you know.
Oh my God, I loved it. I loved
so good. That's my kind of church. I'd start going to church if if I could just be bathed in like blue and pink neon. So I guess I just
want, not in the James Wan way.
Instead of James Wan.
Then I'd be okay.
Yeah, Rowan's going to church if it's good lighting for the selfies, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Jeez.
I was gonna say the only issue I had with this that I had written down was at the beginning, and I say issue like I'm just like, you know, I need to say something, I guess. It's not entirely praise. Is that the one scene I didn't overly like is so they videotape her, she's like just staring at like a door, and I think she's like talking to someone. Yeah. But then they're showing it to like Nim and stuff, and I was like, they literally just showed us the entire scene we just saw, like, again on the laptop. And I was like, yeah, I don't really need to see what I just saw. Like, it's cool you showing people, but I would have rather just to see the reaction to it and not see the footage again.
Yeah, they could have also did like footage on laptop and pull back to basically be like, what you think of it, right? They could have done that as well. I agree. I mean, that's a repeated beat.
And that's the end of my negative.
That's your criticisms.
That's my criticism.
One single scene. All right. Yeah, for me, like, once again, the only things I thought were the downsides is just every now and then when kind of like that spell of the mockumentary was broken for me. And once again, it was just like, why aren't these cameramen leaving? Some of them get killed, which is nice. But I was just like, why aren't these people leaving? You know,
it's nice. It's nice when they get murdered.
Yeah, exactly. So it is nice that it's addressed, and some people do try and run away, so that's good. And then every now and then, like, I think the parade sequence for me where Mink's like on kind of like the Christmas parade, and I was like, oh, cool, The Medium's a Christmas movie. She's like in the she's in the front, and they have like, I don't know, 3 or 4 different cameras of her on the thing and the parade, which is fine. And I'm like, okay, but then there's just like crazy close up of her face, and I was like, okay, that's also kind of crazy. But then there's like not only that, but there's the additional part of the parade float going by, and then Nim is perfectly framed on the other side of the road, like in the background. I'm like, okay, like you only get that framing like with actual cinema. You never get all this stuff in like a documentary, like 4 different camera angles, the perfect timing of like your main character in the background and all this shit. So it was just like every now and then the cinematography was, especially like in the first half, was a little bit too nice or too over the top that like it betrayed. I was like, this isn't mockumentary because it's too perfectly planned at times, right? But
That's
you know,
true.
in the latter half, a lot of it just descends into crazy chaos. That I was like, okay, I no longer have issues with the cinematography because it's just like craziness now. But yeah, it's like very minor, you know.
I thought you were going to talk about when she's on the float and she's just belting kids in the face with.
I got a note of that too.
Candy.
I love her. Just
that was
beating up
she was
kids.
very mother. She was mothering
This
in that
this
moment.
demon just hates kids.
I felt like that was authentic, which weirdly enough, it's like, it can't be, right? But like when she goes down the slide and she pushes that one little girl and she like, the girl smacks her head. It looks pretty hard. And then like you cut away before like she's like crying, and then you see the second girl that like she's just like staring at uncomfortably, and then she starts crying.
Yeah.
Like to me, I was just like, maybe
the
they have
parents?
like different rules for like child acting or like background actors in Thailand. It felt really real to me. Like, I don't know how you do that. Like, that would be like a full stunt over here of shoving a kid into a wall. She smacks her head off the wall. You know, it was just like, damn, they do it different in Thailand.
We're going to need you
They don't
to
give a
fuck
fuck.
this kid up for us.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any other notes on this one, or?
Y'all are gonna hate me, but I'm gonna bring it back to what I was talking about earlier.
Oh no, we
recently
missed
seeing-
one of
Minotaur
Jill's
foreskin?
big points. We missed one big point.
Shut the fuck up.
Is it Minotaur milking? Because I'm over it.
It's not.
It's
not Minotaur
90
milking.
Day Fiance.
It's not 90 Day Fiance. But I'm going back to the Iron Claw and the Colleen Hoover book I just read, because both reference like people being cursed, or chronics, people who just like experience tragedy in their family, and you know, they believe that, but it's actually just like the consequences of their actions. That was a heavy theme in this as well, with like, you know, the son Mac committing suicide, and then they're like, do you know what happens to a soul when they commit suicide? And there's like consequences for that with like demons or whatever, but also the consequences of like religion in the family and people not being able to like live their, you know, what they want to do with their lives, like being a seamstress or like whatever, because they have to take up this duty, if it's real or not, like for the family. And then for them to be possessed as well and have all this bad luck come into the family. I thought it was interesting. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I know. There's a quote that I ripped off the Wikipedia page, like when I was just doing some research, and there's not very much research you can do about this movie, by the way. But basically it was saying like, you know, any action committed by the ancestors became a curse and was passed down in posterity. And specifically the quote that I really liked was, "The Medium is a movie that makes you experience with your whole body that there are horror movies because there are human beings." So essentially, because we exist, evil exists because we exist. You know, there's horror movies, and it's just like, it's just, obviously it's obvious, but it's also just like, it's an interesting point of like what the movie is kind of about. And especially like at the end of it with like that self-doubt and that like crisis of faith and wondering how much she caused and like, you know, what was all this for, essentially. That is just like, yeah, it was a very nice little quote that I, you know, found on the Wikipedia page.
That was nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, I don't really have anything else to discuss either. It was just, you know, it was a very solid watch. It was a very like, it was one of those slow burns that like, it's not even honestly like that slow because stuff was happening. Like, and once again, you expect a documentary or a mockumentary to be kind of slow, especially when setting up the subject and kind of lulling you into like this world. But it just kept growing until like literally like similar to Rowan, the third act, in my opinion, I'm just like, this is wild. It's crazy shit happening in this third act, right?
Well, with that, let's land the plane and get to reviewing it. If you're new to the program, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Jill, we'll start with you this time. Okay. What would you rate The Medium?
Well, I think it's my favorite patron pick so far. So thanks, Steven or Steve.
Steven,
thank you, Steven. I love it. So obviously I have nothing bad to say about it. I agree with Colton saying like, you know, sometimes it didn't seem like a documentary, so maybe, you know, there's room for improvement there. But apart from that, I was very invested in this movie. I didn't get bored at all. I think the acting was fantastic. Beautiful shots. I don't know. I'm just like really into the culture and like the spirituality of it. And I think it was gory and scary and just incredibly well done. And yeah, definitely go watch it. So it's a slay for me, a motherfucking slay.
Wow.
Best patron pick so far. What about you, Colton?
Oh, this is tough because I feel very strongly about the movie. I think it's a great movie. Like I said, there's some very small quibbles that kind of I think would probably hold me back from giving like a full-hearted slay. But this is a really strong yay, I think, for me. I think it's genuinely scary. It has like an enlightening view into another culture that similarly like what we discussed, it's like there's more reading and obviously way more probably depth you can get from this movie if I can just do some research into like actual Thai culture. I thought the performances were great. There's some beautiful shots. Of course, sometimes those shots betray like the mockumentary angle, but overall, a great movie. I think this movie is, once again, I said wild a couple of times in this, but it is because it's literally a found footage mockumentary movie that's like something similar to Noroi or Lake Mungo. It shifts into like The Exorcist. It shifts into like Paranormal Activity, and then it goes to like weird zombie like Wreck or something like that. And then it comes back to like Blair Witch, like the occult, you know, more occult laden than the Blair Witch. That I'm just like, and how the hell does it do all of that and not like crumble under its own weight? Like it shifts to all these different movies and somehow stays cohesive and coherent and still like an enjoyable movie. So yeah, this is a very strong yay to me. I think it's a great movie. I think just literally some of the pacing and like I said, some technical, you know, where it kind of betrays the mockumentary elements. The only qualms I have at all with this. I think it was a great Patreon pick as well. What about you, Rowan?
Yeah, so I'm gonna come in with a slay.
Wow.
I really, really like this. I like this so much.
I think my mic just clipped like crazy, but whatever. I was celebrating.
I had a good time with it. Like I said, it scared me. Most movies don't scare me anymore. So I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough. You know what I did? I was like, I gotta buy this. I need to own this.
Oh, is there like a 4K or a good Blu-ray copy of this or anything?
DVD for us Westerners. There's lots of like Region B Blu-rays. I think like Germany has one and the UK has one and stuff, but I don't get down with that Region B stuff. So I guess for now, DVD will have to do for me. But yeah, like I said, I had no real qualms with this. I loved everything about it. I loved the slow burn. I loved how wild it got. I loved all the nastiness, all the, you know, I did feel bad about the dog.
Oh, wow. You know, it's a good movie if it made you feel bad.
Yeah, I felt bad for the dog, but at the same time, it like, I was like, this is gnarly. This is awesome. I'm all for it. So yeah, I'll get big slay from me. What about you, Mike?
Okay, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not going to give it a slay. It's totally like Colton. It's a very strong yay. I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to have to watch it again. Cause I feel like I definitely lost some things when I was like kind of slipping.
Playing Elden Ring.
Shut up. I lost some things when my attention was diverted, and that happens every time I'm watching a foreign language film. But I thought like the genre conventions of, you know, like found footage, mockumentary and stuff like that, which I, like Rose said earlier, I'm also not a huge fan of. So I was actually, I'm not gonna lie, not looking forward to this movie because I didn't think I was gonna like it based on the description.
I'm gonna go even more honest. Mike put in the group chat like, what the fuck? This movie's over 2 hours long. Like, essentially, like, what is the patron doing to us? So yeah, he was not looking forward to it.
I wasn't. But yeah, and I found that did not hold it back at all. I thought the acting was amazing. The setting was great. The whole like religious basis, I found fascinating. Again, it's this sort of thing that like makes you want to go out and kind of like immerse yourself in it a little bit more. Yeah, like I said, want to watch it again. I thought it was another thing was that, and this goes back to me not liking that genre very much, is that I found that sometimes it was actually shot well, and I know y'all were like, oh, this, you know, goes against the, like...
It's too well done, yeah.
Yeah, but like that, one of the reasons why I don't like that genre is because I want a little bit of art in there, and usually they don't look that great.
True.
So
yeah.
I thought that those moments that you did not like, I actually were like, oh, I like this shot, or you know, oh, this is nice. There's actually something for me as a like person who's really into the aesthetic of things in film to like chew on as well. But you know, obviously the plot and the implications and everything were amazing. But yeah, so I just it gave me a lot to like play with in my hands and my head. So oh my god, I'm playing with my hands like literally here doing the like.
So how many used condoms is that for you out of 5?
It's 7 out of 5. No. Yeah, no, this was such a good pick. It was a solid yay. Excellent pick. Yeah, I loved it. We'll watch again. Although it's so funny because you brought up like a 4K and I was like, I can't imagine that this looks good on 4K, but maybe it does. I don't know.
Yeah. I just want to mention real quick before I plug the socials that we never mentioned that baby Pong, he gets eaten, which was crazy.
I'm sorry.
Once again.
Oh yeah, like they pulled out all the stops. It was like the animals are dying,
Pong, so
children are dying.
I want to pour one out for
baby
baby Pong. That was
first
crazy.
of all, you guys are taking care of someone who's possessed. Why would you keep the baby in the house? First of all.
Times are tough,
so,
Jill. You can't just, have another apartment.
It was never gonna work for baby Pong. His parents, his mom was an idiot.
And I talked about Noi for a bit there, but I didn't mention the one little beat where she's confident that she feels Bayan's presence in the ceremony, and then she leads it herself. But then when her daughter is like put in front of her, like she can't like get over her maternal instincts and like proceed with the ceremony. Just a very powerful moment. I was like, I forgot those 2 little notes. I gotta mention it. So yeah, once again, very, very strong yay. But if you made it this far in the podcast and you're not following us on our socials already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads, Blue Sky. If there's a social media there, we're probably there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to support the show like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Stephen, Joy, Carvey, Dan, Brian, and Trevor gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams hosted by Jill and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early. Be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. And yeah, just like Stephen, you can pick a movie where, half of us slays it, which is pretty wild. Rowan, music in this movie? Is there anything that would make a playlist? Not really, right?
No, I don't think so. This didn't really rely on much music. But if you want to hear some scores and from some movies that do rely on music, go to Spotify to the It Slays Podcast Horrific Playlist. You can go to any of the social media that Colton just mentioned. Go into the bio, click the Linktree link, take you directly there if you have any problems finding it. And we upload music from scores or licensed music from iconic horror movies or horror movies we review or just horror movies we love. So yeah, go there, go get some spooky music on, because why the hell not? And from there, all we have left is to say thank you yet again to Steven for supporting and everyone supporting. We do enjoy doing these, even if Mike is like, oh my God, this movie's so long. This is what happens. This is the good things that happen. I was like, oh, it's over 88 minutes. This is torture. This is two happy Patreon picks in a row, I think. for me at least, Graveyard Shift.
The big watch.
Big watch, and then The Medium. So maybe a good pairing for you there. The Medium and then Graveyard Shift.
Yeah, let's see what my mom picks next, because that's their next Patreon pick.
I'm so excited.
But yeah, as always, thank you for all the support, and we will be back. As always, I am your humble host, Rowan.
Thank you, it's Mike.
I'm Colton.
And bye, it's Jill.
See you later.